The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the bustling streets. People hurried along the sidewalks, some rushing home after a long day at work, others enjoying the lively atmosphere of downtown. Among them was Maya Thompson, a strikingly beautiful and confident black woman who had just wrapped up her evening yoga class. Her workout attire, a sleek tank top paired with a flowing skirt that swayed gently with each step, made her stand out in the crowd. She carried herself with poise, radiating an air of calmness that seemed almost otherworldly amidst the chaos of the busy street. Maya loved this time of day. The cool breeze felt refreshing against her skin, and the golden hues of the sunset created a serene backdrop to her walk home. As she strolled past cafes and shops, she couldn't help but notice how vibrant the area felt. Street musicians played, soft melodies on their guitars. Vendors called out to passers-by, and children laughed as they chased each other around park benches. It was moments like these that reminded Maya why she adored living in such a lively part of town. But not everyone shared her sense of peace. Across the street, Officer Mark Dalton leaned against his patrol car, scanning the area with a scowl etched onto his face. Known for his abrasive attitude and disdain for anyone he deemed out of place, Mark had built a reputation among both his colleagues and the community. He prided himself on being tough, a no-nonsense cop who didn't tolerate nonsense, but many saw him as something else entirely, a bully hiding behind a badge. Mark's eyes darted from person to person, searching for someone, anyone, who might give him an excuse to flex his authority. His gaze landed on Maya, and immediately his expression hardened. To him, she looked suspicious. Why was she walking so casually? Why wasn't she hurrying like everyone else? And why did she have to wear that skirt? In his mind, every detail about her became a reason to scrutinize her further. Without hesitation, Mark crossed the street, his heavy boots thudding against the pavement. Pedestrians instinctively moved out of his way, sensing the tension radiating off him. When he reached Maya, he planted himself directly in her path, blocking her movement. Startled, she stopped and looked up at him, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Excuse me," Maya said politely, trying to step around him, but Mark shifted slightly, ensuring she couldn't pass. "What's your hurry?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You got somewhere important to be?" Maya blinked, taken aback by his rudeness. "I'm just heading home," she replied calmly, keeping her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. "Is there a problem?" "Oh, I don't know," Mark shot back, folding his arms across his chest. "You tell me, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" "This is my neighborhood," Maya answered, her patience beginning to waver. "I live here." Mark smirked, clearly unconvinced. "Yeah? Well, we've had reports of suspicious activity around here lately. People loitering, causing trouble. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Maya frowned, her frustration growing. "Suspicious activity? I'm literally walking home from yoga. Are you seriously accusing me of something based on what? How I look?" Mark ignored her question, instead narrowing his eyes as if studying her more closely. Then, without warning, he stepped forward, invading her personal space. Maya instinctively took a step back, alarm bells ringing in her mind. Before she could react further, Mark reached out and grabbed the edge of her skirt, yanking it upward. Time seemed to freeze. Maya's heart pounded in her ears as shock washed over her. She stood rooted to the spot, too stunned to move or speak. Around them, the once bustling street fell silent. People stopped mid-step, their mouths agape as they watched the scene unfold. A few gasped audibly while others whipped out their phones to record the moment. "What are you doing?" Maya finally managed to choke out, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "Let go of me." But Mark didn't listen. Instead, he continued pulling at her skirt, muttering something about conducting a search. The absurdity of the situation hit Maya like a punch to the gut. There was no justification for what he was doing, no probable cause, no warrant, nothing. This wasn't about protecting the public. It was about power, about control, about making her feel small. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything changed. A sharp, piercing sound cut through the air, startling everyone within earshot. It came from a small device clipped to Maya's waistband, a personal security gadget designed to emit a loud alarm when triggered. Mark flinched, momentarily distracted, and loosened his grip on her skirt. Seizing the opportunity, Maya pulled away, putting distance between them. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, alerting her that the security system had activated its recording feature. Unbeknownst to Mark, every word he'd said, every action he'd taken was now being captured on video. For the first time since the encounter began, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Whatever happened next, she knew she had proof. Proof that could expose the truth. Proof that could hold him accountable. As the reality of the situation sank in, Mark's smug demeanor faltered. He glanced around nervously, noticing the sea of disapproving faces staring back at him. Some people were shaking their heads in disgust, while others whispered angrily to one another. One woman even shouted, "Leave her alone." The weight of his actions, and the potential consequences, began to dawn on him. For Maya, the ordeal was far from over. But in that moment, standing, tall despite the humiliation, she realized something crucial. She wasn't powerless. Not anymore. The piercing alarm continued to blare, cutting through the tension like a knife. It was loud enough to turn heads from blocks away, and soon the entire street became a stage for the unfolding drama. Maya stood frozen for a moment, her heart racing, as adrenaline surged through her veins. She could feel the weight of countless eyes on her, some filled with pity, others with anger. But she forced herself to focus. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about standing up against injustice in a world that often turned a blind eye. Mark, still reeling from the sudden activation of the security device, stumbled backward, his hands flying to his ears in an attempt to block out the shrill noise. For the first time since the encounter began, his confidence wavered. He glanced around nervously, taking in the sea of disapproving faces surrounding him. The crowd had grown larger now, drawn by the commotion, and their collective gaze bore into him like daggers. Some people whispered furiously among themselves while others openly glared at him, shaking their heads in disbelief. "What's going on here?" a man called out from the sidelines, his voice sharp with accusation. "Why are you harassing her?" "She didn't do anything wrong." Another voice chimed in, this one belonging to a young woman holding her phone aloft, recording every second of the incident. Her screen glowed brightly in the fading daylight, capturing not only Mark's actions but also the reactions of those watching. Maya, regaining her composure, took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Though her legs felt shaky and her mind raced with conflicting emotions, she refused to let fear take over. Instead, she channeled her anger into determination. "You need to stop," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're violating my rights." Mark hesitated, clearly unsure of how to respond. His earlier bravado had vanished, replaced by uncertainty and growing panic. He glanced at the device clipped to Maya's waistband, its red light blinking ominously, and then back at the crowd. Realization dawned on his face. He had made a grave mistake. Not only had he acted recklessly, but he had done so in front of witnesses, and worse, on camera. The alarm finally stopped, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The absence of sound seemed to amplify the tension in the air, making every breath, every movement, feel heavier than before. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, which displayed a notification confirming that the footage was being recorded and uploaded automatically to her cloud storage. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips as she realized the implications. There was no way for Mark to deny what had happened. Every word, every gesture was preserved for posterity. "Do you realize what you've done?" Maya asked, her tone calm but laced with steel. "This is assault. This is harassment. And thanks to modern technology, the whole world will see exactly what kind of person you are." Her words hit Mark like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond, perhaps to offer some half-hearted excuse or apology, but nothing came out. His usual bravado had evaporated completely, leaving behind only shame and regret. The officer who prided himself on always being in control was now utterly powerless, exposed for all to see. Meanwhile, the crowd continued to swell. More people joined the scene, drawn by curiosity and outrage alike. Some held up their phones, capturing additional angles of the confrontation, while others shouted demands for accountability. "Call his supervisor," someone yelled. "Make sure this doesn't go unpunished." A middle-aged woman stepped forward, her expression fierce. "I saw everything," she declared, addressing both Maya and the growing audience. "If you need a witness, I'll testify. No one should be treated like this." Maya nodded gratefully, touched by the stranger's support. In that moment, she felt a strange sense of solidarity, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this fight. Despite the humiliation and violation she had endured, she found strength in knowing that others were willing to stand beside her. As the UI situation escalated, a nearby shopkeeper emerged from his store, visibly alarmed by the commotion outside. "Is everything okay?" he asked, looking between Maya and Mark. When no one responded, he turned to Maya specifically. "Do you need help? Should I call someone?" "Yes," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Please call the police department. Tell them Officer Mark Dalton needs immediate attention and supervision." Her choice of words elicited murmurs of approval from the crowd, many of whom nodded in agreement. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his face flushed with embarrassment. He muttered something under his breath, though whether it was an apology or an attempt to justify his actions remained unclear. Whatever it was, it did little to ease the mounting pressure on him. The weight of public scrutiny was crushing, and he knew it would only get worse from here. Back at the precinct, news of the incident began to spread quickly. Dispatchers relayed frantic messages about a viral video showing one of their own behaving unprofessionally. Within minutes, higher-ups were scrambling to contain the damage, calling emergency meetings and issuing vague statements about investigating the matter thoroughly. But even they couldn't ignore the severity of the situation. Social media platforms buzzed with outrage, hashtags like "Nowhere's Justice for Maya" trending rapidly as users shared clips of the altercation alongside calls for reform. For Maya, the aftermath was both empowering and exhausting. As she walked away from the scene, flanked by supportive strangers who offered words of encouragement, she replayed the events in her mind. Though relieved that the worst was over, she couldn't shake the lingering sting of humiliation. Still, she reminded herself of the bigger picture. This wasn't just about her. It was about sending a message. About showing others that they didn't have to stay silent when faced with injustice. That night, as she sat in the comfort of her apartment, Maya scrolled through social media, watching as her story gained traction online. Thousands of comments poured in, expressing solidarity and admiration for her courage. Journalists reached out asking for interviews. Activists praised her resilience, vowing to use her case as a catalyst for change. And through it all, Maya felt a spark of hope ignite within her, a belief that maybe, just maybe, this painful experience could lead to something meaningful. But as the hours passed, reality set in. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and moments of doubt. Yet as she stared at the glowing screen of her phone, she made a promise to herself. She wouldn't let this moment define her as a victim. Instead, she would rise above it, using her voice to inspire others and push for systemic change. Because if there was one thing Maya Thompson understood, it was this. True strength wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about enduring it, learning from it, and emerging stronger than ever. By the next morning, Maya's story had exploded far beyond the confines of the bustling downtown street where it all began. Social media timelines were flooded with posts about her encounter with Officer Mark Dalton. The video of the incident, now viewed millions of times, had become a rallying cry for justice, sparking conversations about systemic racism, police accountability, and the treatment of marginalized communities. Hashtags like "Justice for Maya" and "Enough is Enough" dominated Twitter trends, while Instagram stories featured screenshots of the footage alongside impassioned captions calling for change. Local news outlets picked up the story almost immediately, airing segments that included interviews with eyewitnesses who had been present during the altercation. One woman, a mother of two, recounted how she'd initially thought the scene was some kind of misunderstanding until she saw Mark grab Maya's skirt. It wasn't just disrespectful, it was dehumanizing, she told reporters, her voice trembling with emotion. Another witness, a college student named Jamal, described feeling sick to his stomach as he watched the officer's actions unfold. "She didn't deserve that," he said firmly. "No one deserves that." As public outrage grew, so did the pressure on law enforcement officials to respond. The police department issued a brief, carefully worded statement acknowledging the incident and promising an internal investigation. However, their attempt at damage control only fueled further criticism. Many pointed out the lack of specifics in the statement, accusing the department of trying to sweep the matter under the rug. Protesters gathered outside the precinct building, within hours holding signs that read, "Protect us, don't assault us, and accountability now." Their chants echoed through the streets, drawing even more attention to the case. For Maya, the sudden spotlight was overwhelming. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications from friends, family, and strangers alike. Some messages offered words of encouragement, praising her bravery and resilience. Others asked if they could share her story or invited her to speak at rallies and events. While she appreciated the support, Maya couldn't ignore the toll the situation was taking on her emotionally. She replayed the incident in her mind over and over again, reliving the humiliation and anger she'd felt when Mark violated her dignity. Sleep eluded her, and when she did manage to drift off, nightmares plagued her rest. Despite the emotional weight, Maya refused to let herself be silenced. With the help of her close-knit circle of friends and family, she decided to take action. A trusted friend connected her with a prominent civil rights attorney named Lisa Chen, known for her work fighting against racial profiling and police misconduct. When Maya met Lisa for the first time, she was struck by the lawyer's calm demeanor and unwavering determination. Lisa listened intently as Maya recounted every detail of the encounter, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. By the end of their conversation, Lisa assured Maya that they would pursue justice together, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever faced similar abuses of power. Lisa wasted no time filing a formal complaint against Mark and the police department. In addition to seeking damages for the trauma Maya endured, the lawsuit demanded policy changes to prevent future incidents. Specifically, it called for stricter oversight of officers, mandatory training on cultural sensitivity and implicit bias, and the implementation of body cameras to ensure transparency. Lisa also reached out to local advocacy groups, urging them to amplify Maya's case as part of a broader push for reform. Within days, organizations dedicated to racial justice and police accountability joined forces, pledging their full support. Meanwhile, Mark's life spiraled into chaos. Suspended indefinitely pending the outcome of the investigation, he retreated to his small apartment, avoiding contact with colleagues and neighbors. News of the viral video spread quickly among his peers, many of whom distanced themselves from him out of fear of being associated with his actions. Even his wife Rachel struggled to reconcile the man she married with the person depicted in the footage. Arguments erupted between them almost nightly, with Rachel questioning how someone she loved could behave so cruelly. Mark tried to rationalize his behavior, convincing himself that he'd simply been following protocol, or at least what he believed to be protocol. But deep down he knew the truth. He had acted out of prejudice, targeting Maya because of unconscious biases he had never bothered to confront. As the days passed, guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. He found himself replaying the incident in his mind, imagining alternate scenarios where he made different choices. What if he had walked away after noticing her? What if he had treated her with basic respect instead of hostility? These questions haunted him, but there was no going back now. The media frenzy surrounding the case intensified, with journalists digging deeper into Mark's past. Reports surfaced detailing previous complaints filed against him, including allegations of excessive force and discriminatory behavior. Though none of these cases had resulted in disciplinary action, They painted a troubling picture of an officer whose conduct had long gone unchecked. Critics argued that this pattern of behavior underscored the urgent need for reform within the department, while supporters of Maya cited it as proof that accountability was long overdue. Public demonstrations continued to grow in size and intensity. What started as a small group of protesters outside the precinct soon evolved into massive marches that shut down major intersections and drew national attention. Activists organized teach-ins and town hall meetings, using Maya's story as a springboard to discuss larger issues affecting minority communities. Speakers emphasized the importance of solidarity, urging people of all backgrounds to join the fight for equality and justice. Amidst the whirlwind of activity, Maya remained steadfast in her resolve. She attended press conferences and community forums, sharing her experience with anyone willing to listen. At first, speaking publicly about such a painful moment was daunting, but each time she stood before a crowd, she felt a little stronger. People responded to her authenticity, connecting with her vulnerability and determination. Strangers approached her afterward, thanking her for having the courage to speak up. Some even shared their own stories of mistreatment at the hands of law enforcement, reinforcing Maya's belief that her fight was bigger than herself. Behind the scenes, Lisa worked tirelessly to build a strong legal case. She gathered evidence, including witness statements, expert analyses, and records of Mark's prior misconduct. She also collaborated with tech experts to analyze the security footage, ensuring its authenticity and admissibility in court. Every step of the process was meticulously planned, with one goal in mind: holding those responsible accountable for their actions. As weeks turned into months, anticipation built around the upcoming trial. Legal analysts debated the potential outcomes on television, while social media users speculated about whether Mark would face consequences for his behavior. For Maya, the wait was agonizing. She wanted closure, not just for herself, but for everyone counting on her to set a precedent. Yet, despite the uncertainty, she held on to hope. If nothing else, the widespread attention her case had garnered proved that change was possible. All it took was one brave voice to ignite a movement, and Maya was determined to be that voice. The day of the trial arrived and the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters lined up outside, microphones in hand, eager to capture every detail of what promised to be a landmark case. Inside, rows of seats filled quickly with spectators, activists, community members, journalists, and even curious citizens who had followed Maya's story online. The atmosphere was electric, charged with both hope and tension. For many, this wasn't just about one woman seeking justice. It represented a chance to address decades of systemic issues that had plagued marginalized communities. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table alongside her attorney, Lisa Chen, whose calm confidence served as an anchor amidst the storm. Dressed in a simple yet elegant navy blue dress, Maya exuded quiet strength. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a folder containing notes and documents related to the case, but her expression remained resolute. She knew the weight of the moment, not only for herself but for everyone counting on her to hold the system accountable. Across the aisle, Mark Dalton slouched in his chair, looking smaller than ever. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a defeated slump. Gone were the polished boots and neatly pressed uniform he once wore with pride. Now he appeared disheveled, his face pale and drawn. Beside him, his defense attorney shuffled papers nervously, clearly aware of the uphill battle they faced. The evidence against Mark was overwhelming. The viral video, witness testimonies, records of prior complaints, and expert analyses all pointed to egregious misconduct. As the judge entered the room and called the court to order, the crowd fell silent. Opening statements began, and Lisa wasted no time setting the tone. Standing tall before the jury, she painted a vivid picture of the events leading up to the incident. "This isn't just about one bad decision," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "It's about a pattern of behavior rooted in prejudice and unchecked power. My client, Maya Thompson, was targeted not because she posed any threat, but because of biases that have no place in law enforcement or in our society. Lisa went on to highlight how Mark's actions violated not only Maya's rights, but also the trust placed in officers to protect and serve. She emphasized the broader implications of the case, arguing that failing to hold Mark accountable would send a dangerous message, that abuse of authority is tolerable so long as it goes unchallenged. Her words resonated deeply with the jury and those watching from the gallery, drawing nods of agreement and murmurs of support. When it came time for the prosecution to present its evidence, the impact was undeniable. First, the viral video played on a large screen for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as viewers watched Mark grab Maya's skirt, his face twisted with aggression. Even those who had already seen the clip online found themselves moved anew by its raw intensity. Next, eyewitnesses took the stand, recounting their shock and outrage at witnessing such blatant disrespect. One by one, they described Maya's composure under duress and Mark's escalating hostility, painting a clear narrative of wrongdoing. Perhaps most damning were the records of Mark's past behavior. Investigators uncovered a trail of complaints, dating back years, all dismissed or ignored by the department. Former colleagues testified about his reputation for targeting minority individuals during routine stops, often using excessive force or making baseless accusations. An internal affairs officer admitted under questioning that these red flags should have triggered more thorough reviews, but were instead brushed aside due to bureaucratic inertia. Mark's defense team struggled to counter the mounting evidence. Their attempts to portray the incident as a misunderstanding or isolated mistake fell flat when confronted with the sheer volume of documentation proving otherwise. When Mark himself took the stand, his testimony revealed cracks in his carefully constructed facade. Under cross-examination by Lisa, he stumbled over explanations, contradicting earlier statements and appearing increasingly flustered. At one point he muttered, "I thought I was doing my job," a remark that drew audible scoffs from the audience. Throughout the proceedings, Maya remained composed, though the emotional toll was evident. During breaks, she stepped outside to gather her thoughts, leaning on friends and family for support. They reminded her why she was fighting, not just for herself, but for countless others who had suffered similar injustices without recourse. Each time she returned to the courtroom, she carried their voices with her, bolstered by the knowledge that her courage could pave the way for meaningful change. After days of testimony, closing arguments brought the trial to a dramatic climax. Lisa delivered a passionate plea for accountability, urging the jury to recognize the significance of their decision. "This isn't just about punishing one man," she said. "It's about sending a message that we value human dignity above all else. It's about saying loud and clear that no one is above the law, not even those sworn to uphold it." Finally, the jury retired to deliberate. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered, holding signs and chanting slogans like "Justice for Maya" and "No more excuses." Inside, Maya clasped Lisa's hand tightly, her heart pounding as they awaited the verdict. When the jury returned, the room fell deathly silent. The foreperson stood clearing her throat before delivering the words Maya had hoped to hear, "Guilty on all counts." A wave of relief washed over her as tears streamed down her face. Cheers erupted from the gallery, echoing into the halls beyond. For the first time in months, Maya allowed herself to exhale fully, feeling the weight of uncertainty lift. In addition to finding Mark liable, the jury awarded Maya substantial damages, a symbolic victory meant to acknowledge the trauma she endured. But perhaps more importantly, the ruling mandated sweeping reforms within the police department. Mandatory bias training, stricter oversight protocols, and increased transparency measures were among the changes ordered by the court. These provisions ensured that Maya's fight would leave a lasting legacy, pushing the system closer to accountability. For Mark, the consequences were severe. Stripped of his badge and facing public disgrace, he retreated from view entirely. Rumors circulated about his deteriorating mental state, with some claiming he rarely left his home. His marriage crumbled under the strain, leaving him isolated and broken. While some viewed his punishment as insufficient given the harm he caused, Others saw it as a sobering reminder of the cost of unchecked prejudice. Back in the courtroom, Maya addressed the judge during the sentencing phase. Speaking softly but firmly, she expressed gratitude for the outcome while acknowledging the work still needed to create true equality. "This is a step forward," she said, "but it's not the end of the journey. We must continue to push for change, for ourselves, for our children, and for future generations." As she walked out of the courthouse surrounded by supporters, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she knew she wasn't alone. Together, they had proven that standing up against injustice, even in the face of fear, could spark transformation. And for Maya, that realization was worth every struggle she'd endured. The verdict marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Maya, but for the entire community. In the days following the trial, the story continued to dominate headlines, sparking conversations far beyond the city where it had unfolded. Talk shows invited experts to discuss police accountability and systemic racism, while opinion pieces flooded newspapers and online platforms. Maya's name became synonymous with courage and resilience, inspiring countless individuals to speak out against injustice in their own lives. For Maya, life slowly began to return to a semblance of normalcy, though nothing would ever truly be the same. The emotional scars from the incident lingered, surfacing in moments of quiet reflection or when she least expected them. Yet, she refused to let those wounds define her. Instead, she channeled her pain into action, determined to turn her experience into a force for good. She started by partnering with organizations dedicated to protecting marginalized communities, lending her voice to campaigns advocating for policy changes at both local and national levels. One of the first initiatives Maya championed was the development of affordable personal safety tools, devices like the one that had saved her during her encounter with Mark. Collaborating with tech companies, she helped design gadgets equipped with features such as GPS tracking, automatic video, recording, and emergency alerts. These tools were marketed not only to women but also to anyone vulnerable to harassment or abuse. "Everyone deserves to feel safe," Maya often said during interviews. "Technology can't solve everything, but it can give people a fighting chance." Her advocacy didn't stop there. Recognizing the power of storytelling, Maya launched a podcast titled Voices Unsilenced, where she interviewed survivors of discrimination, police brutality, and other forms of oppression. Each episode highlighted their journeys, offering listeners insight into the challenges faced by marginalized groups while celebrating their strength and perseverance. The podcast quickly gained traction, becoming a platform for amplifying voices that might otherwise go unheard. Meanwhile, the reforms mandated by the court began taking shape within the police department. Officers underwent rigorous training. Sessions focused on cultural sensitivity, implicit bias, and de-escalation techniques. Body cameras became mandatory, ensuring transparency in interactions between law enforcement and the public. Independent oversight committees were established to review complaints and monitor officer conduct, providing an additional layer of accountability. Though progress was slow, the changes signaled a shift in mindset, one that prioritized trust and respect over authority and control. Community leaders praised these efforts, acknowledging that while the road to true reform was long, every step forward mattered. "We're planting seeds," one activist remarked during a town hall meeting, "and thanks to people like Maya, we're starting to see them grow." Mark's absence from the force left a void, but it also served as a cautionary tale for others in law enforcement. His downfall became a topic of discussion in training seminars, reminding officers of the importance of integrity and empathy in their work. Some colleagues admitted privately that his behavior had always raised red flags, but fear of retaliation or apathy had kept them silent. Now, encouraged by the reforms, more officers felt empowered to report misconduct without fear of reprisal. For Mark, life after the trial was unrecognizable. Stripped of his badge and reputation, he struggled to find employment, his name forever tarnished by the scandal. Friends and family distanced themselves, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the person revealed during the proceedings. Rumors swirled about his whereabouts. Some claimed he had moved to another state seeking anonymity, while others whispered that he spent his days holed up in his apartment, consumed by regret. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Mark's actions had cost him everything. Despite the satisfaction of seeing justice served, Maya understood that revenge wasn't the goal. It never had been. Her focus remained on creating a better future, one where no one had to endure what she had gone through. To that end, she founded the Resilience Initiative, a non-profit organization aimed at empowering victims of abuse and discrimination. Through workshops, counseling services, and legal assistance, the initiative provided resources to help individuals reclaim their lives and advocate for themselves. The impact of Maya's work extended far beyond her immediate circle. Across the country, people inspired by her story began organizing grassroots movements, holding rallies, and petitioning lawmakers for change. Schools incorporated lessons about systemic inequality into their curriculums, teaching students the value of empathy and activism. Even corporations took notice, pledging funds and support to organizations working toward racial equity and social justice. As months turned into years, Maya's influence only grew. She traveled extensively, speaking at conferences and universities, sharing her journey with audiences eager to learn from her experiences. Her speeches were powerful yet relatable, blending vulnerability with hope. "I'm not special," she often told crowds. "I'm just someone who decided to stand up when I could have stayed silent, and if I can do it, so can you." In private moments, Maya reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful evening on the downtown street. There were still days when doubt crept in, when the memory of Mark's hands on her skirt threatened to overshadow her progress. But each time, she reminded herself of the bigger picture. Every challenge she faced had led her here, to a place where she could make a difference not just for herself, but for countless others. On the anniversary of the trial, Maya organized a celebration to honor the collective effort that had brought about change. Held in a park near the site of the original incident, the event drew hundreds of attendees. Families picnicked on blankets spread across the grass, children played games, and musicians performed uplifting songs. At the center of it all stood Maya, addressing the crowd with a warmth that radiated genuine gratitude. "Today isn't about me," she said, her voice carrying over the cheerful hum of the gathering. "It's about us. All of us who refused to stay silent, who demanded better, and who continue to fight for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. We've come so far, but our work isn't done. Let's keep pushing forward together." As applause erupted around her, Maya took a moment to soak in the scene. Children laughed, couples danced, and strangers exchanged smiles, a testament to the unity forged through shared struggle. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel proud, not just of what she'd accomplished, but of the community she'd helped build. Maya's journey proved that even in the darkest moments, light could emerge. It showed that standing up against injustice, though daunting, could spark transformation, not just in systems but in hearts. And most importantly, it reminded everyone who heard her story that one person's courage could inspire a movement, proving that change was always possible when people came together with purpose and determination.